I want to play a game. Open the latest drawing set.
Okay, everyone in the break of the hour over here. So thanks everyone for joining another one of our workshop series here. So our theme for today is Scream, horror movies. We're just bantering about the horror movies before you guys join. So like, please let us know in the chats what are your favorite horror movies and why they traumatize you for your whole life. Mine is Saw. So there you go. So the agenda for today, let's talk about it. Our main topics, we're going to talk about the new feature that we just released last week related to the Google AI image generation, right? So I'm also going to talk about some highlights related to how you can color code work being done in different levels using a masking tool and so on. How to clean up imported models with like a new tool that we just released this week related to selecting small objects, some zone updates, right? And then we could talk about some tips and tricks related to scenario sorting, a prompt for BLOSM to help you with that flow if you still use it, and some of our community events that are coming that I would like to highlight. Okay, so housekeeping items, the recording of this session and all the other ones that we have done before are going to be available on YouTube, right? So check our previous workshops, and these workshops is what we suggest that you kind of like keep in touch and like check them as you can, because it's how you become like a power user in cmBuilder. It's how you go from like a standard beginner user to like learning how to leverage more and more about the tool, right? So you're welcome to use the QA or the chat for questions, and please participate on the chat as much as you can, because just like in the previous last few workshops we had like a lot of interaction on the chat, and it was great. So whatever you see me doing over here, if you have questions, please put on the chat, but also suggestions about like feedback on the tools, things that you would like to see in the platform that is not in there yet, or best practices that you want to share with the community over here. Okay, cool. So let's start with our main topic, Google AI image generation. So the idea of this tool is to give you a AI enhancement of the images that you are creating from cmBuilder, right? So with certain prompts and certain instructions that you're going to give the AI, the image will be greatly enhanced to add new elements, add textures, add buildings on the background, add a bunch of things to help you create like better images for your outputs, right? So one quick thing related to this tool, it's a premium only feature. So for like premium and enterprise use companies, you have access to this tool. For the standard companies, you won't have access to it, but it's great. It's good for you to know what this is about, so you can like make decisions related to upgrading your platform or not, your account or not. Okay. So let me just show quickly over here what I'm talking about. So basically we have a scene like this, right? Where you have like a bunch of elements that you created and you added to your screen and so on. And the idea of the tool is that it will allow you to enhance this picture with certain prompts that you can create over here. And when you generate it, you're gonna have like an output of that image that is improved with the instructions that you're giving in on this AI. Okay, on this prompt. So let me just show you the result before I get back into talking in details on this. Right, so as you can see, that image over there has been improved with like some buildings on the exteriors. It can add materials to the side, it can add elements to it, and can enhance based on like your instructions. You get like different lighting and different options on these outputs. So let's learn how to use the tool. Right? So the first thing that we need to do is to enable this integration. This can only be done by admins on your company, right? And basically what you need to do is to go over here. I opened Word by mistake. Basically what you need to do is to come into your company account as an admin, and you can on your homepage, you're going to go into company settings and you're going to go into integrations. And as an admin, you're going to turn this new integration here on. Okay. So it's important that the admin does it, because once you turn it on, you're basically accepting the terms and conditions from Google. And that's why only the admins can do it. Cool. So if you're in this workshop and you're not an admin, please ask your admin to do so. And once you have this new integration enabled, basically now it's just the idea of using the tool directly, right? So this AI generation enhancement can only be applied to a single image export. We cannot yet do that in bulk images, like apply to all the slides or to a video, right? So these are things that we are kind of like planning on adding next, and having like testing this option to see what we can get out of it, like the value that this allows you applies to the users, and then we will see how we can expand this and so on and so forth, right? So at the moment, the AI model that we are using is the Nano Banana, not the Nano Banana Pro. So just Nano Banana for now. And again, if like from the feedback that you guys will give us, we will give more options on different models for you to use and so on and so forth. Okay. So basically the next step, once you have turned on the integration, is to simply in the view, you will come in here and you will define what will be your camera angle to export, right? So if you want to use one of the presentation camera angles that you already have created, you can go into the presentation mode and you can apply a camera angle of a scene, or like in the milestone that you want or something like that. You can go in, apply the slide. So if you click on the slide, the camera angle will be shown for that. And then you can go back out of that view and go into the export share, click on export the current view, and then you have the AI button over here, right? So if you want to use one of your presentation slides, first apply the slide so you can get the camera angle that you want, and then you can go into the export and share. But if you want to freely just like work with the tool freely without having to use any of the existing camera angles, you can simply go into one of the milestones that you want and position the camera the way that you want to enhance. And one thing that is interesting here is that you can also play around with the perspective of your camera. Like right now, like the camera is using the 50 angle field of view, but if you enhance this, it kind of like opens up this and gives more cinematic kind of like approach to it and so on, right? So you can play around with this camera angle here to create the kind of like angle that you prefer. Okay. Next step is to go into the export and share function, where you're going to click on current view. This tool is only applied to the current view. And then you can click on enhance with AI once you have turned on that integration. So in this view over here, we are going to decide how we're going to create that prompt, right? So we have a set of templates that you can use here, right? So you can use a complete construction, active construction, excavation phase, night scene, snowy winter day, rainy day. So all of these are templates that basically we created them based using some best practices and so on, and you can kind of like use that as your starting point. So if the template does not give you the exact result that you're looking for, you can add more to it. So I can go in over here and add like more instructions. For example, add buildings on the background, right? So these templates are all editable, and you can copy paste them as well, so you can edit this in another format that is not just the cmBuilder one. But basically, if I go over here and click on active construction, this will apply that template for active construction, and I can click to generate an image, right? So this will take around 15 to 60 seconds to create that image, and once this is completed, you're gonna get 4 different variations of that image. Okay, so from those variations, we can decide what to do. And one thing to keep in mind is that AI instructions, like most of the times, it's hard to predict exactly what the AI will do, right? So for example, I use this active construction prompt over here, and the AI decided to turn my steel building into a concrete building and just add a bunch of active construction elements to the view, right? So of course, this is not the result that I'm looking for, and you can click on any of these images over here at the bottom to see the result. But it's good to click on this preview in window over here and expand it so you can see in the whole screen. And then you can slide this to compare the two different results, right? And then if you go over here in this little arrow, you can navigate for the different options that the AI created. As you can see, it's just adding things that I don't want in that scene. So given that, I want to adjust my templates now, my prompt, right? So once you select the prompt and you apply to it, you can generate the image, review the results, and then you can iterate on that and then just keep like adjusting to get you a result that you want, right? So for example, I will adjust this active construction prompt over here, and I'm going to edit it, right? So I'm going to edit saying, for example, that this is a steel construction, steel structure construction scene. Don't add any concrete elements to the view, and maybe add only elements compatible with steel construction, basically, right? And then I can add more stuff to this. So let's say that I want to enhance like that background over there. So I can say, for example, add buildings um, on the background to create an infinite horizon. I'm not the best on prompt like creation, so I will give you guys some instructions on how to create good prompts. Okay, infinite horizon. So generate that. Mm, okay. Cool. Just having some instructions, prompt instructions over here from Shane that I'll explain in a minute. But just with those adjustments that I did over there, you can see that it added the beauties of the background. It didn't change things to add concrete elements and so on. So you have like a better kind of like result of what you're doing over here. Sometimes the AI can change the angle of your camera. See how like it's changing a little bit the angle and it's adding these streets over here in the background on in the bottom and so on. So again, it's just like an iteration that you're gonna go and like write more on top of it. So our prompts that you have over here, the ones that are already created, they are structured in a way like you have instructions, you have the sky background, you have lighting, building construction, slabs, and so on. So you can, it's better if you make the adjustments on your templates, like the one that I did over here. This is a steel construction scene. It's better if you do those on these kind of like proper sections of your prompt. So like the AI will understand better what's going on. And of course, you can review them to see if like these will create the result that you want. Cool. So basically, your imagination is the limit over here. You can do weird stuff if you want to. Add a Godzilla in the background and in the background and some TIE fighters, right? So like whatever you give the instruction to this, like we will apply to the view, but keep in mind that like the AI doesn't know exactly what your image is, like what is that is there that is showing. So it's better if you like with the more details that you add to this, the best it is, right? So of course you can see that Godzilla over there, some TIE fighters, and there you go. Now you have like a real active construction site. That's the sort of chaos that you see in construction sites every day, right? So yeah, I think that Shane like gave some instructions over there on the chat as well. So are there any questions that I should answer over here? Let me check.
I think we answered all the questions. One thing I will ask is, Pedro, if you don't mind trying a nighttime scene, so a non-active construction. Uh, so a few things, like active construction is harder for the AI, right? Because it's been trained on a lot more of scenes of finished construction, finished buildings than active construction. So it'll be easier for it to try things like nighttime. So the reason that they don't work right now, Pedro, is that our default nighttime scene prompt
Yeah,
is it's for a
for a
completed
completed
building,
one.
right? It
Yeah,
says it's like a completed building, right? So you need to
yeah,
modify that. So really be aware of like when you're doing active construction stuff to go into the prompt and modify it. And as Pedro said, some tips are general tips are you want to be specific, around like what's happening in your site, in your buildings that you're building, the equipment on your site, the logistics of it, material storage, all that sort of thing, the surrounding environment, how you want that to look like, lighting, camera. You want to be explicit about what to add, what to remove, and then you want to iterate, right? Like this,
yeah,
it's a very iterative thing of like it might even turn out to be different versions with the same prompt. That's why we actually produce 4 different versions. So, look at the results and then iterate from there on, like,
yeah.
say, specific things that you want to change about that output.
Yeah, as you can see, we like when we use completed construction as an input, this like can create like better outputs of this and so on and so forth. Yeah, because like it will add windows, it would add like better lighting and so on. And like Nikon said, the majority of like the training material that was used for AI in general is completed construction and not like completed buildings and not active construction scenes. Cool.
And again, the iterative like comes into play here as well. Like
Hmm.
this is a data center example. It may not have windows where it's showing windows, right? So you want to go
Yeah.
and now modify the prompt to say like, don't add windows, for example.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you can use one of these images as like a prompt for the next one. So for example, if I like this one the best, I can click on this button over here and say regenerate with this image, right? And then I can go in here and say like, do not add windows to the facade of the building, so like again, just like keep like you working on this back and forth to adjust things on the way that you prefer. Cool. So let me see this final result over here, and then I can jump into best practices of prompt creation. And it did not like remove the windows because I used an image that already had the windows. So like the AI is understanding that, okay, I'm not gonna add windows, but your original image already had windows, right? So again, it's the way that the AI uses the input to enhance that image. Cool. So let's go and talk about some best practices of prompt creation, right? So there is a more complete version of this in our user guide, but I'm just gonna like highlight a couple things, right? So the first one is that it's always better to follow a structured formula. Like for example, in our prompts, you're gonna see over there like talking about slabs, talking about columns, talking about the construction staff, and so on and so forth. So like all of these kind of like sections is better because you get like a proper formula, and you should like highlight what is the subject, right? What is the building that what is your actual beauty that it's going on in the screen, like what is the context, what is happening on that screen, on that scene, and so on. Which environment do you want to use, like which weather, which time of the day, the style and quality of like the image that is generated as well. So all of these things you should include on your prompt to give better instructions. Be specific with construction details. So instead of like in your prompt saying add a crane or like enhance the crane or whatever, you should try to like be more specific about it. Instead of saying crane, say tower crane. Instead of saying or crawler crane or things like that. Otherwise, the AI won't know which type of object do you actually want. There are several types of cranes that exist, right? So try to specify your resources as much as you can. Also identify construction materials, like this is a concrete building, this is a steel structure, this is just a facade, and so on, and describe the site condition, right? So it's an active excavation, it's a concrete pouring scene, and so on and so forth. So defining the light and atmosphere always gives like a kind of like a realistic rendering on top of everything. So this is a golden hour, this is cinematic lighting, or like the examples over there, overcast day lighting. You can use rainy day, you can use, this is a night scene that's snowing and things like that. These will always improve and give it like a more professional quality to the image that is created, right? So if you define what is the lighting that you want from it, defining the camera angles as well, like leveraging that on your prompt. For example, to like mention that this is a drone view, like this is a street level view, or this is a wide angle lens to capture the whole scope of the construction site. This is a floor plan view to create a site layout, or like a safety instructions and so on. This will always help like the AI keep the angle that you want, like maintain or improve from the angle that you have, right? And of course, you're gonna keep like iterating and refining this to and adding more descriptive adjectives, waiting on things that you are supposed to be emphasized, like they're more relevant and so on. All of that in your prompts, right? And I saw in the chat over there someone mentioning that it would be great to have like a way to save this as your own library, so you can keep a consistency across like the organization on like on your company. So we don't have that tool yet. Probably we will add this at some point. Everything that you guys mentioned on the chat will become a feature request. So it's a great opportunity for you to give us the feedback over there. But for now, what I would suggest is that create a local library of like these prompts, things that you see that you had like a very good result, and you want to keep that consistency over like different projects. Maybe talk to your team and create like a prompt library where everybody can access that and use it to keep that consistency going. Okay. So any pending questions before I move on to the next item?
I think we're good. We answered
good?
some questions in the chat.
Awesome. So yeah, check further instructions in our user guide. We are still building the pages for the user guide to give you better instructions, but this will be done by the end of the week. So we will keep adding like more information in there. And I believe that we also will create a community kind of like discussion, just like we did for the other features that I mentioned in the last workshop. Okay. So let's go on to our next item on the agenda over here. And basically, let's talk about how to color code facades, right? So this was a request from a customer like a while ago, and I've especially for people that works with like tenant improvement or facade restoration or doing any type of work or like windows or like any work that you want to kind of like illustrate in an overall approach, you can use a masking tool to color code the levels and the facades of a building to represent like what's going on in there, right? So you can identify vertical progress and different work fronts going on, like the blue over here can represent, I don't know, interior fit out, and then the green can be like the facade install, and then the yellow is like delivery, like partial delivery of those levels and so on. And I'll show you guys now how to adjust the master sketch to adapt to this, and how you can copy paste this masking to create like a sequence of coloring. And then let's rename those so we can identify those phases a little bit easier. Okay. So let me go into a scenario here that this masking already exists. So let me delete that one, and I'll create it from scratch with you guys over here. So let's say that I'm gonna like, this can work both for like a BIM model that you have imported or the existing model from the context that comes from Google Maps or whatever building that already exists in your screen, you can use the massing tool to do that. So the idea here is to create like a way to color these levels very quickly, right? So we're gonna go into the massing tool and I'm gonna add a massing, right? So I'm gonna add a massing starting over here at the bottom of the building, and then I'm gonna go to my 2D view so I can like look it from above, and I'm gonna draw the shape that represents just the overall shape of that building. So big rectangle, right? Of course, in different buildings, you're gonna have like more complex shapes and whatnot, but we're gonna create that massing over there first, and then I'm just gonna count like how many levels over here. I already counted. There are 13 levels on this building. So I'm gonna add that this is 13 levels, and I'm just gonna gonna keep the massing story, the story height as 3. I know it's wrong, but like I'm gonna show you how to quickly fix it. So when I hit confirm, now I have a massing over there that shows that. Okay, so like I mentioned, let's say that I did it wrong and created all the levels with the wrong heights. So I can hold control and then I can select all of these levels over here. Then you're going to edit story, and then you can click on story height, and then you change it to 4, for example. So 4, it looks like 4 meters is a very kind of like bang on like height for this building, right? So we can change the color as well. So let's say that yellow is going to represent a specific work front that's going on in that building. Okay, so I'm going to hit done, but I need to, if I wanted to make it like even more accurate to this, I'm gonna adjust like some of the levels over here. So first level that I'm gonna adjust is gonna be the top one, so I can bring it like a little bit higher and highlight that like this. Okay. Another thing that I want to do is to adjust the floor plan based on the different like shapes that I'm going to have like for different levels. So I'm going to hold control again, and I'm going to select the levels that have a different floor plan, and right click, going to edit massing element, and then click on edit sketch, right? So from here, I need to select which level I want to use as a starting point for my sketch. So I'm going to keep like level 6 for some reason. And when I hit OK, I can go on the 2D view now, and I will hold shift and drag this line over here. So when you hold shift while working with a sketch, you're basically creating a constrained movement. So like I'm holding shift right now, and I can only adjust this point on top of that line or on top of this line, right? So this holding shift allows you to do that constrained movement. If I release shift, I can put this point whatever I want, right? So that's a great way for you to keep like your sketch very well aligned and with 90 degrees angles of everything. Okay. So when I hit the confirm over here, I adjusted those levels to fit that different shape. And then on the level above, the last one, I'm going to go edit the sketch and edit this guy over here. So now I have a color coding kind of like shape, a colored shape for this level to represent like work that is being done over here. So I'm gonna call this work front number 1. So I can go over here in my massing tool, and I will edit this massing to rename it so I can identify it quickly on the tree structure what this massing is about. So let's say that this is interior fit out. Okay. So I hit done. Now I have that massing over there. If I go into my timeline, I can connect this massing with different stages, right? So I can say that, for example, on milestone number 2, I want these 4 levels to be visible. So I'm going to select these 4 levels. I'm going to right click and say begin from this milestone. And then on level 3, milestone 3, sorry, I'm going to add like these other levels over here. And then on milestone 4, I'm gonna go and do these other levels. So I can, when I go back, none of these levels are visible, and then I can navigate for this. I will see those levels showing up right there. Okay, so this can be one way of you highlighting work that is being done over there. You can add callouts to represent this, or like some labels to annotate this. I don't know, like let's say that this is your fit out, you know. And then like, of course, you can put the colors of these labels to fit like whatever you want to highlight and whatnots and so on and so forth, right? So this is one way of doing it, but let's say that you want to show that now on the milestone 3, I want these levels to have another color. So we don't have yet a way for you to change the colors of the massings through the milestones. So what you need to do is to duplicate this massing and create another massing with a whole different set of colors so you can hide and show them in different levels, right? So we're gonna click on this massing, then I'm gonna copy this guy, and I'm gonna paste it, and I'm just gonna paste it here like anywhere, right? So we don't have yet a way also of you duplicating the objects in the same location, but this is something that we're gonna build soon, the ability for you to duplicate elements in the same location instead of like copy pasting and placing them wherever you want. Okay, so for the massing, basically I just put it like here on the side, and I'm gonna click on the move function, go into the 2D view, go into the 2D view, and then go over here and like position it accordingly, right? So, okay, we can do this, and I'm just gonna like position this like close to the area that I want, and I'm gonna go into this second massing that I have over here. Which one is the one that okay, this is the second one. So I'm gonna go to the second massing, and I'm gonna rename this to say like level complete. I don't know, right? And I'm gonna edit all the stories of that massing, right? So I'm gonna edit all the stories to put in like in a different color, green, right? So what I want to do is that I want to go and navigate through this. So to show that this massing will have like a different, I think I added the wrong massing. Level complete was supposed to this one. Yeah, I added the wrong one. Sorry about that. Let me just fix what I did wrong over here and put this in yellow again. There you go. So, okay, so the level complete ones, I want to just show them at a specific dates, right? So I want these levels over here to be completed on milestone number 3. So I'm going to go into milestone number 3 and say begin from this location. But it's important that you also hide the ones that you had as a partial completion before, right? So I'm going to end this one at this milestone. So when I go to the first milestone, there's nothing there. The first one shows only the yellow ones, and then the second one shows the green ones, right? So that way you can play around with that and just like put these different color coding elements at different stages, right? So now if I go to the last one over here, I'm doing quickly with my shortcuts on my keyboard, Control B and Control E, so you can assign things to the milestones quickly. Okay, so let's take these guys and hide them in here, and then these guys and hide them in here. So basically, what I did was on the milestone number 2, I decided to hide to start and end these levels at the same milestone because they will show just the yellow colors. And then when I go to the next one, the green colors will show up and the yellow ones for this, the levels will show up and consecutively. So you have like a way of color coding these work being done in different stages. Cool. So for everyone that works with like that wants to highlight some work being done internally in a building, for example, let's say this building over here. We have a sequence created for this building that at some point I want to show like what's going on like inside of these levels, inside of the facade, right? Like I can use that color coding system to highlight the like work being done inside of the levels, like interior finish and so on and so forth, instead of like going in and having to have a new model just to represent those objects and so on. Cool. So yeah, this is a good way for you to represent renovation, tenant renovation, improvements, and so on and so forth. Cool. Cool. Awesome. So, okay, next step, cleaning up imported models, right? So one thing that sometimes happens, and especially for people that works with like large scale projects and warehouses, data centers, and things like that, is that you're going to be using models that have a lot of parts, right? So, and especially with Navisworks models, like you get handled a Navisworks model that shows all the disciplines of a building, you know, structure, architecture, but also um, uh, electrical elements, hydraulic, HVAC, mechanical parts, and so on and so forth. And these models, especially these different systems that are out, the disciplines that are not structure and architecture, we have a lot of small parts that are not really relevant for your work in a way, but will overload your performance and will overload your scene with parts that you don't need, right? So let's talk a little bit about how you can clean up those imported models to improve your performance, like on the view, because now you have like the scene had the product has less parts to render, but also improve the selection process because your tree structure will be cleaner, right? So we can remove these small parts in a bulk now with a new tool that I'm going to show. But you can also use the tree structure to select the elements and remove them, use the different grouping methods that we have in the tree structure, the search filters, and there's a little tip over here about combining the beam levels temporarily so you can work with all IFC classes. Okay, so let's go back to this scenario here where I'm going to use this model here as an example, right? So this is a small model, like generic model that I got just to represent like, okay, I imported this model and there's a lot of parts over here that I don't want to manage. And imagine this in a huge scale, like with like way larger than this, with like all of this level of details with all of these small bits and pieces, right? So rounded parts and small parts in cmBuilder are always like always takes more processing power. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the filtering for this on the model itself, right? And in this model, I'm going to go in right click and I'm going to edit beam model. So in here, we have this tool called edit tree structure, right? So this will give you a way for you to remove parts of your model from this scene. So it's kind of like unloading those parts, right? So now we have a new feature here that allows you to select parts that are quite small. So we have like a couple of options, for example, small hardware for boats, screw, anchors, and things like that. You can click on select and it will select all of those parts in that model. If you want to expand this and say, okay, I'm going to go to small fixtures like doorknobs and things like that, you increase this volume a little bit, and then you can hit select, and now it's selecting more parts that will fit this criteria of having a small volume, right? So once you're done with the selection, and you can add more things to the selection if you want to just by holding control and selecting them, right? Then you add like more parts to the selection. And once you're done with the selection that you want, you can click on this remove function over here. And this will simply now put these objects into the remove bucket. And when you click on update, this will regenerate the scene without those parts. So it will save you processing power, but also your tree structure will look a little bit cleaner, right? So I'm not going to go forward with this because it's just going to refresh my scene, but this is a way for you to remove a bunch of parts of like these more complex models, especially because these parts are not that relevant for your work. Okay, so another thing that I want to talk about this is that you don't need to go into the edit model directly. You can simply in this view, you can decide which parts that you want. You can hold control, select a bunch of parts, and then right click, going to edit beam element, and then you can click on this button over here, remove model element, and then the selection will already be created with the remove function applied. And when you click update, this will regenerate your scene without those parts. Okay. So basically the idea here is that learning how to work with your tree structure and these selection methods will make your life easier because you can select a bunch of parts that fits a specific criteria and remove them all at once. So, but the thing is, when you work with Navisworks models like NWD and NWC, plus FBX models, your tree structure is different than working with IFC and Revit files. So this is a Navisworks model, and this architectural one over here, this guy, is an IFC or a Revit file. So basically, you can see that on the grouping method that we have over here, that is organized by BIM structure, the IFC file has a very well-defined like structure of parts and levels over here. So I can select the whole level. I can select just doors and flow terminals and all of these elements just for that level. Whereas the Navisworks model has an undefined tree structure. So when I expand this, everything is going to be in the flat list, right? So for Navisworks and FBX models, I will always suggest that you use a different grouping method for your tree structure. Go into the group by over here and change to original file tree. This will give you the same structure that you're gonna find in the Navisworks counterpart. So like if you open this model in Navisworks, you will see exactly the same tree structure that you have over here if you look in this grouping method as the original file tree, right? So this way you can select a bunch of things that you don't want from that model and just remove them all together, right? So if I hide these objects over here, you see that I'll have like a way cleaner view of this model to work with, right? So these two grouping methods, you can navigate between those two depending on the model that you're working with, if it's an IFC Revit file or if it's an Navisworks FBX, okay? So you can also use other things to help you select these elements. So like, for example, if I click on one of these elements that I want to remove, like they're similar, let's say one of these fittings over here, I can click on this object and I will see what is the name of that object over there on my tree structure, you know, or if I double click it, it will show up over here on the top. And I can use that also to search a bunch of like these elements, you know, so I can go and say, okay, this is an ACM, whatever, ACMF thing. I can go over here and say, I want to select now all the ACMAF objects. And then when I click on the model as a whole, it will select every object that will fit that criteria, right? But of course, I'm selecting more parts than what I wanted over here because my search criteria was a little bit weird, right? But you can play around with like different names and different search criteria to select all the parts inside of a file that fits that criteria. And then you can remove them all and do like whatever you want to do. Cool. And a quick tip before we move forward is that for IFC and Revit files like this, where you can find a BIM structure like this pretty well defined over here, let's say that you want to remove all furniture in this model. Like you see that there's furniture over here. There's no furniture in any of the levels, but there are some flow terminals over here that I want to remove and so on. So instead of expanding this restructure and then selecting each one of these, like holding control and selecting all of these groups, what you can do is select the whole model, go into edit BIM elements, and then you can go into the properties over here where you can adjust the properties of like the parts that you selected. And I can now create a temporary level. So when I do a temporary level like this, basically I'm going to combine all of these parts under a specific level attribute. That's going to be my, let's go over here. That's going to be, my under this selection. Now all the doors, all the flow terminals, all the furniture elements are inside of these levels. So this is a great way for you to go ahead and select a group of parts, like the class of parts that you want to remove. And then once you remove them, you can simply go over here, go into edit BIM elements, go into properties, and then you can just like disable this temporary level that I created over here. And now like all the parts will go back to their original levels, minus the ones that you removed. Okay, so these are quick tips for you to clean up your model if you import them and it has like more parts than you need and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, so I have a question over there. I'm importing a range of large models. Is there a preference of which file types one's better or loads faster in cmBuilder? So in terms of like loading faster, and we always suggest that you use Revit and IFC files because they have like that tree structure, and also repeated geometries will be processed faster compared to NWD, NWC, and FBX files where like every individual geometry is rendered as a single object, right? So there's no instancing in FBX and Navisworks files where that happens with Revit and IFC, which will guarantee like a better performance for you to work with. Okay, but if you're working with like a large range of models, a bunch of like combined parts, it's always good to review those models before you import them to cmBuilder, just because like you probably will have like more capabilities of like filtering elements out and so on in the origin software that created that model. Okay, so let's talk about zone updates, right? So two new updates related to the zone feature. One is that the multi-domain is now available, so you now can draw more zones in the same sketch, right? So with just one sketch, you can create like different zones in there. And if there is an overlapping of shapes, like the ones that I'm creating over here in this kind of example, there will be a remove effect. So, and also in the zone updates, we expanded our texture library that has like more items for you to use and more textures for you to use. But again, this is applied to only premium subscribers. Okay, so let's talk about the multi-domain for zones. So I'm going to create a zone here, and I will create like a little triangle. And when I hit OK, that triangle creates over there normal business like we all know, right? So if I go and edit the sketch and I add now another triangle, let's say outside of this zone, we will create now two zones separated from each other. This was not possible before, where you had like the ability to create like these two different domains. And added to that, you can now create like a donut like effect. Basically, when you create a zone on inside of another, this will create a remove of a zone, right? So this allows you to create more like easier paths and so on. So you can even leverage like the offset tool by keeping the original line. You can now create like an offset where you can drag this and it will be a parallel of like the other zone, and it basically just like keeps creating this like parallel effect in there, and you have like a bunch of different zones to create to work with. Okay, so this can be useful for several different reasons, like creating quicker roads, creating remove areas of like a big shape, and so on and so forth. And additional to that, we have also a new set of textures in our library that will be applied to premium and enterprise accounts. That basically we added a bunch more that you can use over here. And one of my favorites is the rebar one. So if I am in a, let's say, in a slab pouring like this, I can now go in and add a zone. And let me go to a location where there's no, okay, there you go. There's no columns in there. So if I want to create like my mesh in here for the rebar, I can go in now to zones, add a zone over here on the top, and I'm going to project the shape of this slab, so I don't need to draw it like from scratch. And when I hit confirm, I can now go in there and make sure that you're not projecting the zonal terrain, because otherwise it's going to be underground. And now we have this new rebar material over here that basically, instead of you adding resources and adjusting the resources to fit this geometry, you can use the rebar zone to quickly create those. And now for like these areas over here where you want to create a remove function, you can go in and then add some rectangles to remove the zone in this area. So I'm going to draw the shape over here quickly. And if I go into 3D, I can snap this line to the faces of my walls over there. Right, so looking from below like this, it's a little bit easier. And I'm basically snapping these. And when I hit confirm, it creates a remove effect for that zone over there. So you won't pretend that you're going with a rebar on the elevator opening over there. Cool. So this is a very interesting and fast way for you to create partial completion of of the zones and not partial completion, but different steps of your concrete pours, for example, because also you can use zones to create, for example, like a plywood. So that way you have like a plywood kind of like texture applied to that area to represent like, okay, I'm doing the formwork and then I'm doing the rebar and then I'm doing the actual pour of the concrete. Okay. So all of these, we are zone improvements. Please use them. Let us know what you think. And there you go. Cool. So let's go now to the tips and tricks where small update related to scenario sorting. A lot of people have asked us to create like ways for people to quickly find the scenarios that they're working with or like adjust this somehow. So we're taking steps toward that. We will improve this even further than what I'm going to show today. But today we have like a very quick improvement that is just like sorting scenario by name or sorting scenario by the ones that were added more recently and who added the latest, like just compiling, sorting this by the person that added the scenario, right? So you can still use the search function over here, of course, but this sorting will give you, like, especially with the last edited date, you can see which ones were like edited last. For example, if I put this descending, I can see that these are the ones that were like recently edited, and the ones over here are the last ones. Cool. So this will help you to identify the scenarios that are more that were updated recently. And please let us know in the chat if there are any sorting kind of like categories that you want us to add to that list. Quick tip related to BLOSM creation. So this is something that a lot of people have stopping using it after we did the Google Maps integration, right? So, but in some situations, you might still use BLOSM to create the shapes of the surroundings and buildings, especially when you want to edit, you want to customize more that shape compared to what you can do in cmBuilder with the site conditions and so on and so forth. If you want to split that shape in smaller pieces, if you want to do vertical splits and so on. So you can do that yet with the Google Maps integration, but you can still use BLOSM to do so. So one quick thing related to BLOSM is that the process with BLOSM before is that you would need to open Blender, click on the select tool over here, and then in the selection tool, you would try to find like where is the map and so on. You need to compare that map with what you have in cmBuilder. So you create this selection rectangle over here, and then you go in and then position your rectangle to define the area that you want to export, right? So this is like the standard practice, but just recently I tried using a AI prompt to create that selection faster, right? Because you already have like some information to help you over here. So for example, I can go into a ChatGPT over here, and I can go in there and say, okay, I want to, instead of like going into this view so I can copy paste these coordinates and take some time, I want to create these coordinates that I'm going to paste on Blender here faster and like using the information that I already have. So basically you can like go into ChatGPT, and there is a prompt that I added to the user guide that basically it says like, I have the coordinates of a location, and then you're going to use the coordinates of your project, and you want them, the AI, to generate a set of coordinates representing a square with this size, that is the size of the map that you have in cmBuilder, and the result will be like in this format showing the bounding box of like what is going to be pasted in here. So instead of going in that process of selecting the map like from here, from that other site, I can simply go into ChatGPT, placing the lat long in here, and then check what is the size of my map, 500 meters, and then put it over here, 500 meters square, and then when I hit OK, this will generate the, come on, man, why are you doing all of this? I don't need that. There you go. So you can generate these coordinates here quickly, and then you paste them in here, and now you have a way to create that quickly, right? That square, that selection of the location that you want to import on BLOSM. Okay, so this is a quick tip to help you like work a little bit faster if you're working with BLOSM, and this is already in our user guide on the BLOSM creation article. Cool. And just to finalize our session today, I want to highlight some community events that we are hosting in the next coming months, right? So we started doing something that's called Site Plan Series, where we go to a specific location and we host kind of like an event with existing customers on that location, and we invite like other leads and like people that would be interested in cmBuilder and so on, to talk about the program, to discuss and network and so on. And we did this recently in Seattle, was very successful. We had like a lot of good feedback about it. And we are doing this now in Sydney on April 20th, like when me and Javi will be going to Sydney soon, in London in June 2nd. And we are also hosting our Site Plan Summit in July over here in Vancouver, right? So for anyone that is interested in attending to any of these events, please let us know. You can let us know in the chat as well, or like email us, but you can also sign up for these events on our website, right? So we have a website that shows the recaps of previous events that we've done, and you can see all the feedback of customers and how the value that they are getting from this networking environment, from like sharing their experiences and getting feedback from other users of cmBuilder as well. But not just about cmBuilder, but like site logistics complications and things like that. This the event there are other subjects that people talk about it. So I welcome you all to go into our website that I'm gonna post here on the chat, that shows the events in cmBuilder. Nikan was faster than me on there. And you can RSVP to these as well and register for the ones that you can attend, let's say in Sydney or London and so on. Okay. So this is it for today's session. No painting questions, I believe. Nikan, were you paying attention to everything?
Yep. Yes. I
Okay,
think we're
cool.
up to speed with the questions.
Awesome. So just a quick recap of what we talked about today. We talk about the Google image generation using AI enhancements. The highlights basically are the color coding for the facades, the cleaning up of the imported models, some updates related to the zones, multi-domain, different textures, and all of that. How you can sort your scenarios, and the BLOSM prompt over there. Cool. So I'll cue the music, which is a scary one. Yeah. And we'll stick around for like a couple seconds to answer questions, and maybe I'll get a jump scare of someone over here behind me. Let me check. No, we're good. So Colin, you asked about the presentation being recorded. Yes, we record all of these presentations, our workshops, and we put them in our workshop playlist that I will put over here in the chat.
And we'll also send an email with that includes the presentation slides. So we'll send that to you end of our day here or first thing tomorrow morning. So within 24 hours, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I think that's it then. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining.